Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we will start with the first session, and this is about conducting good research. So here you have listed the guiding principles for conducting good research. And we are talking about honesty, conscientiousness, transparency, and responsibility. So not considering this principle is threatening both the validity and the reliability of scientific research. In order to understand what good research is, you need to recognize all the potential errors that we can have throughout the research process, and we will discuss this today. Many things can actually go wrong, and many things go wrong. I'm sure you know already about the replicability crisis in psychology and many other sciences as well. So today, we will start by identifying risk and pitfalls in the research process. So we will be discussing some of the research biases that we can encounter, not all of them, because depending on the different methods, you can have different biases. So today I will list the biggest one or the most common ones, but these are not all. Actually, I left some materials for you in the Moodle platform. I left some papers over there talking about, in general, bias in research, but also about specific biases that we will discuss. So you can find the materials there. I'm sure it will be helpful. So besides discussing about different biases that we can find in research, we will also talk about the ethical practice that we are supposed to uphold while conducting research in psychology. And very importantly, something that often goes unseen is about hegemony academic practices that we have, and they are biasing research and the research findings. So let's start discussing bias in research. So bias, as you maybe already know, occurs when systematic error is introduced into the research process by selecting or encouraging one outcome or answer over others. This is the way we can identify bias. And we can have bias in all stages of research. We can have it during study design, when we are collecting the data, when we are analyzing the data, and during manuscript preparation and then publication. So it's all over the place. And we have to be careful to be conducting the proper, the good practices in order to do the things we are supposed to do. We have to be careful. So you need to know first what can go wrong. So, for example, regarding bias during study design, so as you can imagine, your own perspective on the phenomena, it's already biasing the kind of study that you want to do, right? The way you are selecting your variables, the way you are using your constructs, it's already biasing in some way your research, and obviously the way you are selecting your methods. So you have to be honest with yourself. Is this phenomena that you want to research actually coming from a lot of review that you already conducted, and you are looking at other people's work, and you are trying to devise what is the next step according to the state of the art that you are looking into in empirical research, or is just because the topic is close to you and you are making this call because of that. So you have to be really careful in that. When you are already collecting your data, you can have selection bias, you can have participant bias, you can have researcher bias, you can have many biases at this stage also, and we will discuss about this today. During the analysis of data, this is something that I actually don't know if you are aware of. I don't know if you are aware of p-hacking or messing up with the data and then getting the results that you want to get just for publishing, and then obviously your study cannot replicate anymore. So I don't know how knowledgeable you are about these issues with the use of a statistic in scientific research, but you have to be aware of these kind of things because it is often a common practice. And this is why during this course, I would like to tell you what kind of numbers you should care about, what the numbers are actually telling you, and if the statement that you have in the paper from the author actually holds or not. So you have to be really careful. A lot of research that is out there is actually not replicable because they were messing up with the data analysis. And this is something that obviously we would like you to know better during this cross training, to be able to identify it and then being able to judge the research better. And during publication, we have obviously publication bias, which I know that you must be aware of. We have reporting bias. So as you can see, many things can go wrong here, and you have to be really careful when you're conducting research. And obviously, you have to look for all of these aspects in every paper that you are reading. Every paper from psychology, you have to be really critical about each one of these aspects in order to know if you can actually trust the conclusions or the findings from the paper. Okay? So let's talk about researcher bias. Well, researcher bias are systematic errors in the research process that are attributable to the researcher behavior, preconceived beliefs, expectancies, or desires about the results, right? Like you are seeing in the picture, he's trying to get a specific response, looking at certain way, and this way you can bias the research. So some solutions that I have for you in order to conduct good practices when you are in these phases of research, for example, is having a double-blind study when neither the researcher or the participants know to which condition they belong. So it is more difficult to ask for a specific answer. So this can be a solution. And also using standardized research protocols beforehand. So this way you will treat all participants the same. You will give the same instructions, you will try to put the same face, and if you are careful with this procedure, you can better take care of these kind of biases. For example, selection bias, this is some really big issue that we have in psychology, not only in psychology. I have an example also from medicine, and selection bias occurs when participants chosen for a study do not accurately represent the larger population that the research is intended to analyze. For example, I'm sure you already know that in psychology, often we use samples that are college students. Psychology students often are the sample for the studies that we conduct because it's convenient, right? So often because they are there and they get some credits for it, but when you are conducting a study with them, it is not always generalized. You cannot take it to the general population. So you have to be careful with these kinds of things, also when you are reading these kind of papers. So some of the possible solutions are select participants that actually represent the target population that you want to address. You can use randomization, for example, or having a control group. So you can have a specific sample of people with certain characteristics and then choosing a control group that has another characteristics that you know that are different, and then you make comparisons. So these kind of things can help you with selection bias, okay? So we also have participant bias, for example. Participant bias is when a participant in a research study may consciously or unconsciously act the way they think the researcher wants them to, rather than respond naturally. So here you can find some phenomena, for example, like sociability, social desirability, which is the desire to be good experimental subjects, or self-selection bias, when specific individuals self-choose to participate in a research study. So it may be something behind this decision of the participant to participate in this specific research, and this can bias the results, right? And also we have the Hausdorff effect, which is people tendencies to behave differently when they become aware that they are being observed. The Hausdorff the Hausdorff effect. I don't know if you heard about it before, but here you can find like all these kind of phenomena happens at this stage, and you have to be aware of, right? So about bias during the procedure. When a participant in a research study is required to provide certain information under certain form of constraint, and it could be short time, or it could be being if they will be compensated for the participation. So you need to know, is this kind of constraints are actually changing the findings that you will find, that you will see in the sample. So you have to be really careful when you are planning your study. And we can also have bias in designing the questionnaires. Some questionnaires are phrased always in a positive way, for example, or the negative way. And we can also have issues in the way we left them to select a response and the choice they have, or the way we are making the administration of the questionnaire. This is also an issue. So as you already heard from Laura in our previous session, she was questioning about the results she was having with the scale for post-traumatic growth. And she was questioning how much of the result was just about the phrasing of the scale and not actually the sample, right? So some examples that we can find here is, for example, response fatigue is when questions asked after in a long survey are often prone to more measurement error or misclassification because people is already too tired, right? So the responses you are getting are not as accurate as the first questions you were asking. We can also have here the acquiescence effect, which is the general tendency of a person to provide affirmative answers to items regardless of the content of the item. So is the yes setting, right? You are just saying yes to everything you are being asked. So you have to be aware of all these issues, and you have to devise a way around them. For example, a way around phrasing the question in the right way is conducting pilot studies in order to understand what people is actually understanding from your question. What are they getting, right? If they are getting the question in the way you want to get them, if you are asking the thing you actually want to ask. And later you can ask an expert to judge, to review the instruments, and they will let you know. You can have, let's say, a board of 3 experts, and you can talk about the validity of the questionnaire. In psychology, we have different kinds of validity. We have construct validity, content validity, incremental validity, predictive validity. You have many kinds of validities, and you have to analyze as much as you can from your questionnaires in order to have a valid experiment or a valid study. We will discuss more about the different kinds of validity and reliability, and one of I think it's before talking about statistics. I think it's about two more Fridays we will discuss about this. And you can actually, another solution for this kind of bias is actually you can statistically control for them. For example, for acquiescence, you can control for that statistically, detecting the covariance in the structure of the variance and means of the scale. So this is a statistical way to try to control for this kind of bias. So if you do this practice, or if you read in one of the papers that they are conducting this practice, you already know that they are being careful, right? So this will give you more elements to judge the results they will give you. Okay, as I was telling you at the beginning, we also have bias in the analysis of data, and this consists in confirmation bias that is emerging when you are using different statistical tests in order to find a significant result, right? You need to find the right p-value in order to confirm your hypothesis. And to do that, a lot of people are changing the parameters of the model. For example, this shouldn't be like this, or they are looking at a specific subset of the data in order to get the results they are trying to get. This is actually also known as p-hacking, which is the act of misusing data analysis to show that patterns in data are actually significant when in reality they are not. So they are running multiple tests on the data and focusing only on the tests that are returning the significant finding, right? So this kind of practice is obviously prohibited. You shouldn't do that, but you couldn't believe how extensive actually is. And for that, one possible solution is the pre-registration with a detailed plan analysis for your data. This is why pre-registration is really important. It's one of the main things why pre-registration exists. And this is a possible solution to this bias. We also have publication bias, which is the failure to publish the results of a study based on the direction or the strength of the study findings, right? I'm sure you have heard about it, the file drawer effect, when research with null results or findings that are not statistically significant are often considered a fail and then not published. This is a big issue because in this way, often like people is choosing not to go for replication, right? If they cannot replicate, and because they will not be able to replicate, and if they have null findings, they won't be able to publish it because they didn't find the same effect they were trying to replicate. And if we don't replicate in scientific research, then we are missing like one of the biggest part of the scientific process. Then we also have reporting bias. This is actually really important, and it has to do like with the author and actually also with the reviewers of the paper. And it happens when you are emphasizing positive or promising results while downplaying the limitations or conflicts of interest in your research. Actually, we will look a lot about this in some examples that we will have in some other sessions. So the way we will work when we are discussing statistics is that I will introduce some statistical concepts to you, and I will explain how they work, why they are important, why they are there, what is the meaning, and then we will look into specific research, and we will see how they are using this specific tool, this construct, and then we will see how they are actually phrasing at the end the result. When you use often, they are using statistical analysis that cannot go that far. But when they are discussing, they are already emphasizing some results and downsizing some results that are really, really important regarding the data. So this is something that you will find often. And there are some statistical analysis you can do, especially when you conduct systematic reviews, in order to test for publication bias. And we have a Heger's regression to test that, and fail-safe N also to two statistical analysis in order to test. When you are conducting a review, you can conduct this analysis and see how much is the possibility that you are reporting these findings, but just because a lot of papers that have null results weren't actually published, right? So all these things are really important. You have to be aware of. And as I mentioned previously, pre-registration of research is very important, is one of the best research practices, and consists on documenting your research plan at the beginning of the study and storing the plan in a read-only public repository. We already discussed this. One of the most common ones is Open Science Framework that I already recommend to you. So using these kind of frameworks will help you to avoid overfitting your data, will facilitate replicability for other researchers, and will allow you to actually falsify or properly test your theories. So this is the way we should conduct research, okay? So obviously the strongest recommendation is pre-register confirmatory research and include a detailed plan analysis, right, of your data. Because as I mentioned before, if you are not careful in the way you are describing your analysis, then you can play with your data and you can just publish information that weren't supposed to be confirmatory, and it's just exploratory, right? Just finding p-values that looks good, and then you are trying to publish that, and you are not even telling anything of your initial hypothesis because that one you couldn't prove, right? So this is why pre-registration is really important.
May I ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah, Sasha, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So do you put then in your paper that you have already done pre-registration? Do you make some
Yes.
kind of remark or a link or something like that?
That is a good research practice, Sasha. So you should put in your paper your pre-registration, and then you have the link of the website. And you can go to the link and you can see the date when you pre-register. And you can see when you were collecting data, when you pre-registered, and when you were running the analysis. So this is good research practice. And I will invite you to always look that in the papers you are reading. Are they stating that they pre-register or not? And are they providing the link? Another thing that you should look for is about the ethical authorization for running the experiments. So they should go to a special committee, usually within the university, in order to be approved. And when they are approved, they also get a special link with the date. And if they are putting this in the paper, once again, this is good research practice because you know they are acting in an ethical way. Yeah. Do we have another question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so regarding research ethics, so as you must know, like it refers to the correct rules of conducting necessary when carrying out research. So you should proceed in a honest way. You should have integrity. You should be respectful, especially with participants. So in order to conduct any study and especially experiment, and you will know more about the difference between a study and an experiment in a future session that we will have. If you want to run it right now, you have to undergo an extensive review by an institutional review board or ethics committee, depending on the country you are, before you can actually start with your study. So this is very, very important. You can find good research practices when researchers do this previously, and they are closely following the advice of the ethics committee. And then when they are actually collecting the data, they can report any kind of incident. So if they do this, they are doing it the proper way, they will have the license and they will put it in the paper. But shockingly as it is, this is not often the case. Many people is just thinking like, you know what, we are running late, let's just start collecting data. I will ask for the ethics approval later. And then you are already testing participants. You are already applying your instruments, and you don't know if you are actually violating some of the rights of the participants. And you will be shocked to know how many of the research that is out there is actually not conducted in the proper order. So this is something that you should actually know about, look for it, and when you are conducting research and you are using participants, you should also do it. I will invite you to conduct yourself in this way. So lastly, let's talk about something that is really, really important, often goes unseen, and this is about hegemony in research. And with this concept, we will describe the relatively dominant position of a particular set of ideas and their associated tendency to become commonsensical and intuitive, thereby inhibiting the dissemination or even the articulation of alternative ideas. So this is a big issue that we have in research in general. We have it in all areas. And within psychology, we have it when you are designing your study with the methods you are choosing, with the kind of topics that you are selecting, with the kind of populations you usually use, like how you are publishing your data, where are you publishing your data, and who are the authors. So we have this kind of wrong practices all over the place, and we have to be, I believe that the first step to get rid of this kind of bias is to be aware of. So for example, hegemony in research design, you can find it really clearly because in psychology, often research is quantitative, is cross-sectional, and is correlational. So they are, most research, it is like that. I will say more than 70%, always quantitative, cross-sectional, correlational. When we know the limitations of a correlational analysis, like you cannot say anything about the hypothesis with a correlational analysis. We have the limitations of only quantitative studies because of the kind of questionnaires they use, and they are often not compatible with all populations. So we have many issues with this kind of design. However, it is often used because it's the mainstream design. You will easily publish if you do it this way. And if you don't do it, for example, if you are running a qualitative study instead of a quantitative one, immediately your research has like a downgrade, right? It's like, it's not proper research. It is research. It is scientific research. Like qualitative research is also scientific research. But you are just using different methods, and you can build on reliability and validity in the exact same way the quantitative research. But often it is not perceived like that. So this is the issue, how we perceive this kind of research. And we have these practices also when we are sampling. I'm sure you know that often research is commonly conducted by Western universities, and they are using their students as part of the study. And these participants obviously are often Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. So this sample is very, very biased. And they were discussing these kind of things, and they call it the weird sampling because of the first word of the. So this is a very interesting paper, I think, from from 2010, and I will put it in the materials in case you want to look at it. But it is often the case, and it goes unseen, right? They are publishing results, and we don't know if these findings actually apply for general population or for a specific population. We actually, this happens not only in psychology, for example, in medicine. Like there is a big issue in medicine, and for example, right now, women still constitute a minority of the study populations when you are looking into cardiovascular disease, for example. Like this was often the issues in the 50s and 60s, and they found the issue in the 90s that they don't know how women behave, like they don't know the disease in women, and even now this population is under study. So this is a big issue that we have in this kind of practices. And obviously we have a hegemony in publications because institutions of academic publishing are constantly reproduced through hegemonical practices when they are selecting mainstream authors, mainstream topics, mainstream methods, and findings. So if you have the proper topic for them, the proper finding for their interest, or if you have a really famous author, then it is likely that you will get published. So if you are not part of the club, you are out. And obviously, this is not good for scientific research, and you have to be aware of these kind of things. So I have for you, really easy, some possible solutions to these practices. And really quickly, I would like to name, for example, that we have mixed methods. So against the mainstream way of conducting research in psychology, which is quantitative, you can use mixed method, and then you have some, in your design, you have both quantitative and qualitative methods. So this is one thing that you can actually do. You will obviously, you will try to address the phenomena in a more comprehensive way, and it will be obviously more complex to look into. This is why it also has some risk, like it is more time consuming, it is more expensive. So you always have some pros and some cons, but you should consider these kind of things, right? Because sometimes a single method is not going to allow you to investigate properly the kind of phenomena that you are looking into, right? So are you asking the right question? Are you using the right method in order to find what is actually happening in reality? So this is one way. You can go mixed methods to not marry with the mainstream way to do it. Another way is to use creative research, which is also not mainstream. So creative research can use, for example, free technological resources in order to get to different populations, right? Not only psychology students. So this is a way you can do it. And you have to also consider the risk that you have. Because you will have, if you are conducting research online, for example, you have to consider the digital divide. Not everyone has access to this kind of media. So also, if you are using these platforms and then using their videos in order to record the behavior and then have proper measurements, but can easily become something unethical, right? So you have to be careful with this kind of resources. And you have to be aware of the allure of technology for data analysis and really fancy statistical analysis. So sometimes software can easily help you to perform many different analyses in your data and then find the value that you want to find. And then you will be in confirmation bias already, you will be p-hacking. So using really fancy statistical analysis can also be against a good research practice. So you have to be really careful while you're using your analysis. Yeah, and if you are using it in the proper way, and that you are reporting everything in the analysis. Because if you are just cherry picking the kind of things that you want to report, once again, you will be biasing your results. Okay, so my final remarks for you today are, please examine the methods that better suit your research question. Consider your target population and the possibility of cultural, ethnical, gender influence in your research. Be aware of this. Evaluate the impact of the use of technology, if you will use technology when testing your participants, if you are conducting empirical research, and always pre-register. Those are my recommendations for you today. So with this, we are over the slides and we can continue with some questions if you have ones. Let me see if I can go to full screen because I don't know what is here. Okay, there. Yeah, I think we have Amber.
Hey, thanks for this. This was great. I had two questions. One is regarding ethics boards, because I think this question got raised in a feminist theology WhatsApp group that I'm in, but like there were complaints about independent researchers not having access to ethics boards. So people like without institutional affiliation. Do you know how that problem gets solved? And then my other question is something that maybe we can address at a different time, but when you were talking about hegemonic research issues, I was just kind of wondering, is there a whole field in like feminist psychology? I mean, I know I've seen like transnational psychology, post-colonial approaches and stuff. I haven't seen kind of an entire area that's like feminist psychology, like there's feminist philosophy. And I was just wondering if there's something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. There are feminist psychology. Actually, you can get a PhD on it. It's definitely a field. And it is very regrettable, but it's true that people that don't have an affiliation, they cannot access an ethic board. And right there, it's an awful practice because right now people are caring about ethic boards because now the journals are asking you for the number of approval in order to publish your research. So actually people before, they didn't care about it because it's like, we are not doing any damage to people. We will just start the experiment. But then in order to publish right now, you need to be approved by an ethical committee. And if you are not part of the university, you cannot have access to that. So it is impossible for that person to actually publish in those journals. So the only option for someone like that is going without this approval and then just trying to publish in some journals that they won't ask for it. Obviously, we are talking about like low impact journals. And this is another problem that we have in psychology, right? It's like, who are you? Like, who are affiliated with? And what kind of access do you have to the journals in order to get your research out there? So all of this is a huge problem. And no, I don't know a specific solution for people that is not affiliated. Yeah, I will look about it. Maybe there are some institutions that are trying to fight this because there are many, like right now, this is so obvious, and this is why I wanted you to be aware of all these issues, because it's a big issue right now. And right now, some journals are actually worried about this, and they are trying to change the way they publish in order to stop these kind of practices. So maybe there are some high-ranked journals that are providing a different way to be reviewed in order to start conducting your experiments. Yeah. Okay, so I think we have next Moritz.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gina. That was really very, very interesting and helpful. I was, as I was listening, I was wondering, as sort of a novice, a beginning researcher who tries to use these empirical methods, I don't think I'm very much in danger of actively doing p-hacking because I'm not very, competent in with these tools yet. So my thought is more, what are some traps that I might walk into unknowingly? Are there certain things that you would say people beginning to use these kinds of tools, are there certain mistakes that I'm most likely to make as I start?
Yeah, definitely. And I will say the biggest issue that you will encounter, it will be when you are designing your study. And it is about your own perspective, your own idea of the phenomena. So we are often biased by the kind of topics that are, popping in our minds, and we are thinking a solution of this phenomena, and we believe this is the way we should go, and we make a model explaining how the process may go, and we think, you know what, this variable that they are mentioning, I think it fits with my model, so I want to run this study. So this is the first thing, the first error that you will encounter, Moritz. And this is why we, like me and Farhud, we were asking you, go and conduct a review. Read about your topic. Read about the phenomena. What is out there? What do already know about the phenomena? What is happening? Which direction is going? Maybe it is going in the wrong direction. Maybe you are trying to look something in your sample that it doesn't matter for participant, right? Maybe the phenomena is in a different way, but you cannot see it because your own perception of the phenomena. So this will be the first one. And you can easily go around that, conducting a review, take a look at the state of the art that you have the phenomena. The last 10 years will be important. Try to devise what is the next step without your interest, at heart. And this way, I think you will avoid the first issue that most people do. You cannot believe I have been in many, many different labs in many, many different countries. And in all the countries, I end up, because I am part of the grad students, right? So I have a supervisor all the time. And then I end up in the US, in Canada, here in Germany, in Spain. I always end up with a topic that was close to my supervisor, like to specific experience. And we weren't finding any, because it was just an idea that they have, because we weren't doing it in the proper way. So try to be a bit aware of this thing, conduct your review, see where the phenomena is going, maybe consult with others, in order to find the proper way, the proper method. Also, the next thing will be not doing the very same thing everybody else is doing, which is conducting quantitative, correlational, cross-sectional analysis. That is the way to go, because it's fast. It's like we say, fast and dirty. And you need to find the proper methods. Even though someone will tell you it will take really long time to do that, like it will be hard for you to do that. Like, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to act in a way that you truly believe you will address the phenomena in the proper way. So these two things, I will say, going into empirical research are really important to be aware of.
Now, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think George is next.
Yeah, thank you very much for your talk. I wanted to know a little bit more about this weird discussion. Is there are the different aspects differently weighted? Because I was wondering, for instance, like the democratic aspect. I find it very hard how to do research in a non-democratic society, just because you don't have access, right, to all the people, or people, they are just being told to say certain things that the regime wants you to say. So I'm wondering, I mean, I'm not saying that you cannot do some research in these countries, but very often these countries would not even allow you to do a certain kind of research just because of the political circumstances. So is there a discussion about this? I mean, I see all the other points, right? If you are going to like the Ivy League university, then of course it's a very small segment of society that is represented. And then if you are doing research with these college students, then that's not a sample of like average students worldwide or even in the US, right?
Yeah. Well, there are two aspects, I believe, of it. One of them is that you have people that is not like they can have different beliefs that just democratic within a country that is democratic. So you can find that. And I mentioned this before because I said something about the control group. Remember, I said, if you are trying to look at a specific sample, maybe you can build up a control group and then test, make comparisons, and actually know if you are looking at the phenomena in the proper way. So this is one way around it. And I will say the other way around this problem, George, could be using different methods, because often, even in these kind of countries, you can have access to the narratives of people because they have access, for example, to medical care. And when they are in this kind of interviews, you can put a few questions in order to start knowing something. So there are always ways around it. Obviously, it takes more time, it takes more effort, but I will say, like, scientific research shouldn't be easy. It should be right, should be properly done, right? And this is why, obviously, I understand your point, and this is why a lot of people will say, well, it is impossible. It is impossible to do it. This is why we have the replication crisis in psychology, because a lot of researchers will tell you, with the amount of papers that I have to publish for my university every year, there is no way that I can conduct proper research. Like most researchers will tell you this. So it's the whole system. So in a way, you have to be committed with actually scientific research and then go a mile extra, I will say. Yeah.
And then just a small second question regarding the Western aspect. I don't know whether that's true. I was just seeing recently a statistic that from 2018 onward, Chinese publications were surpassing like European and American publications, and it's just going up like this, like skyrocketing. So I'm wondering, I'm sure that also in China, you have this problem that you have to publish a lot of papers in a short amount of time in order to get promoted. So most probably many of these papers have no good scientific, like the databases will not be good. But so I was just wondering, is there still like this Western aspect, is it still dominant, or are now more and more like also Asian societies like speeding up?
This is actually a great question, George, because we have within the issues that we have, our system is actually protected, because the journals that are actually high ranking, which are now equivalent to the journals that actually matter, are Western. So in this way, we are protected, because even though our research has some fails and we are doing less of it, but it's the one with like the biggest impact, right? So this is why this is not an issue right now. But for example, Science, which is one of the most important journals that we have right now, it's in the last 5 years, they have been retracting more and more and more of the papers, because they are finding they are not replicable in all sciences. I'm talking about psychology, I'm talking about medicine, I'm talking about physics, all of them. So the way we push these papers and the way we are using the system that we have right now is just not working properly, and they are taking notice. And I think some things will change with time. And I will say being aware of these things is the first step. So right now we don't have an issue regarding like people from China been publishing a lot, because the research that matters is the one that comes from Europe, from the US, right? So I left in the platform a paper for you. Look at it. Hegemonic academic practices, experiences of publishing from the periphery. This is the authors are from Finland, and I think from the UK, and they are making really good statements about it. So I left it. I will leave it there for you. So this is really an issue. Okay, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gina. And maybe I think I missed something about when you were talking about pre-registering confirmatory research. Where do we do that, or how do we do that?
Yeah, let me show you the screen. We discussed this already in the first session that we have, and this website. Let me put it here so you can write it down. The Open Science Framework is for free. Actually, I will leave the link here in the slides, and I will put the slides in Moodle so you can have it there. So in here, you can actually pre-register your research, especially if it is confirmatory, that is, that you have an hypothesis, and then you will be testing specifically the hypothesis. So this is for empirical research. And they have some limitations. This is another mainstream situation problem. You have to fulfill certain criteria in order to be able to use this website. But if you don't fulfill all the criteria for confirmatory research here, there are some other websites that you can use. Obviously, this is the best one and the one that is often used. So this is the mainstream one, and you can do it there. You can pre-register your study there, and I encourage you to do that. And often, when you are trying to publish your research, they are actually asking for the pre-registration. And if you didn't do it, some journals, they will just not publish your findings. So right now in psychology, it's really important for you to do it. And I don't know what kind of research will you conduct. I don't know if you will go for a review, a scoping review, for example. There is a special website to register reviews, and I talk about that website last session, so you can do that. So I don't know what kind of research you will be going for. And obviously, if you have specific questions about your topic, you can send us an email to Farhud and me, and we will make our best to guide you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you are welcome. Do we have another question?
Yeah, let me make it sure. Did I understood you right? There is a homepage. I can look to it if I'm interested in a literature review research.
Yeah.
Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, the thing that I was saying, Matthias, is that this website will allow you to pre-register your systematic review.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So if you are
Thank you.
going for that specific method in psychology, you can do that,
Okay.
and you can pre-register in that website,
Okay.
not in this website. This is why I mentioned this. In this
I
website,
understand.
it's for empirical research, and it has to have specific things that you need to fulfill in order to be able to pre-register there. Yeah.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, you are welcome. I hope you find the topic interesting. With this module, we will be diving in completely in research methods. So we will discuss all the methods that we can use to study the mind and behavior. Hopefully you will find it interesting. Obviously, we will see some statistics because it's the way to analyze data for quantitative studies. But I promise it won't be much, and I promise the construct will be punctual. So I won't be overwhelm you because obviously it can take you 5 years to understand statistics. But we will try to do this in a way that is interesting for you, that is giving you something for your research, for the way that you are actually assessing the papers that you are reading right now.